I want my people to be protected after I'm gone. I can no longer protect them. And my CFO said, that's crazy because you'll dramatically reduce the value of your business. And I said, good, because I don't care about the value of business. I want my franchisee looked after it. So all these things were just radical thinking. I reckon I'm 73 years old, about as good health as you can be mentally and physically. I'll probably live another 20 years. Rupert Murdoch and Warren Buffett can do it, so why not me? And if there's any medical advances in the meantime, I'm certainly going to take full advantage. But I've got 20 years left approximately, and I'm going to make every day count as long as I've got.
Hello and welcome to the Real Biz Life Chronicles, where we discuss all things business, branding, and life. I'm your host, Tracy Fryer, the founder of Design Studio Perth. And to celebrate the launch of season 2 of the show, Design Studio Perth is offering all our listeners a free brand discovery. So if you find yourself frustrated with your current brand and you aren't too sure where to go next, use the link in the show notes below to book in a time to have a chat. Now, the Real Biz Life Chronicles is on a mission to become one of Australia's leading business podcasts, but in order to do that, we please need your help. If you do enjoy today's episode, we please ask that you like and subscribe to our channels below, or simply share this episode with a fellow business owner who's in need of some serious inspiration. My guest today never set out to build a billion-dollar empire. He just needed to pay the bills. While working on his PhD in history at La Trobe University, he started a part-time gardening gig. That $24 hustle turned into a full-time mowing business in 1982. And by 1989, it was franchised. Today, it's grown into Jim's Group, the largest franchise chain in Australia, with more than 50 divisions operating across the country, 5,500 franchisees, and over $1 billion in annual turnover. But the real story, he still answers calls from franchisees, still steps in on customer complaints, still believes that the core of success is caring deeply about people. He's resilient, faithful, and relentless with ideas, a lifelong learner who burns through audiobooks, obsesses over soil on his farm, and funds cutting-edge research in epigenetics, work he believes could change how we treat mental illness and addiction. He's also the author of Biohistory, Decline of the West, and Every Customer a Fan. And he's currently raising money to continue his research in biological roots of behavior. If you need a window into see who this person really is, when a friend was in a tough spot, he quietly paid for their wedding. No fanfare, just loyalty. This episode, it's about how you go from pushing a mowing business to building a billion-dollar beast, and why doing right by people isn't just good business, it's the absolute point. Jim Penman, welcome to the show.
Good to be here, Tracy. I've got to say, when you talk about $1 billion business, that represents the turnover, not the value of the business.
Of course.
Our fees are relatively modest, worth about $1 billion.
Yeah, thank you, Jim, for clarifying. Again, that doesn't take away from the absolutely incredible thing that you've created and what you've given to the business world. So I utmost respect for you.
Yeah, no problem.
Jim, take us back. What was the moment that you decided to start Jim's Mowing?
Well, it wasn't. It was basically my part-time student job. I was studying. I liked studying. I didn't want to take breaks for holidays or anything like that, but I needed a break, and I found getting outside and mowing lawns, originally gardening, was great. Fresh air, exercise, bit of a break in the week, and then I go back and do my studies during the rest of the time. So, and I called it Jim's Mowing because it was named after me. I mean, it wasn't really anything very deep about that. It was Jim Mowing, so Jim's Mowing.
And it sounds like it was quite a natural thing that just happened. Like you needed some extra cash. You decided to use your name, which is great for personal brand as well. I guess what I'm wondering is, at what stage did you notice it started getting a lot of traction?
Well, it was very gradual. I mean, I've been gardening since I was 8 years old. I used to go...
Same.
We had a neighbour across the back fence to Mr. Tapley, and I used to go in and rake his gravel pathways and do a bit of work for him. Gave me 2 shillings, which is Doesn't sound like that's like 20 cents, but you could buy, nice block of chocolate with it in those days. So that was my.
Yeah.
So I did it through most of my childhood, and I always mowed the family lawn too. We had this mechanical mower which just gets stuck on the twigs and things. There's no power. It was just human powered, and so I've always done it. When I left school, I took a gap year. I did a bit of gardening then. Got a few jobs, and I kept on going at university, and then got myself a mower. It was very gradual. And then when I finished my studies and realized I had no hope of an academic career, which until that stage had been my purpose, I started doing it full time. And it was still called Jim's Mowing, but it was just a sort of this is what I do until I find out what I'm really supposed to do with my life.
Yeah, of course.
And even after the franchise started in 1989, I really didn't understand that it was going to be so successful. So it was a very gradual process from 8 years old onwards to the stage when you look at this thing, and I have about 1,000 franchisees, and I think this thing's got some fairly good potential.
Hmm. So when you had 1,000 franchises, is that when you kind of realized that it was taking off?
Well, as I said, it's gradual. It just built. When I first started the franchise, somebody asked me how many franchisees I might have one day, and I said, look, if it works well, maybe one day I could have as many as 100. I actually said that. So I really didn't understand. I didn't have these great goals of, the biggest of anything. I just needed to make money to fund my research. That was the basic thing. I wanted to found a research institute. And when you're an impoverished guy without any skills and with a fairly useless degree, I mean, you just have to work out a way to make money. And I didn't even think it was going to be it, but it just gradually dawned on me that this was the great area to be in. And look, even in recent years, I make the same mistake. I go into other things. I try to trade exchange and a factory to make trailers, and psychology, a lot of different things I'm doing all the time. But it's just this little lawn mower just keeps puddling on and keeps on growing and becomes, unexpectedly successful. I have very little foresight as to what's going to work.
Yeah. It sounds like you're quite intuitive though. So when something comes along and it's an interest of yours, you tend to just go with it. Would I be right in saying that?
Yes, but usually it's a mistake though. That's the point.
Oh, interesting.
Most of the businesses that I've ever tried to run in my life have been failures. Okay. Look, let me go through them if you like. I tried
Please.
Amway. I was hopeless at that. I had a computer shop at one time. I had a mower repair shop. I tried to get a holiday resort going. I tried to launch a psychology institute. This is much later. I tried a couple of times with trade exchanges, the factory to make fiberglass trailers. They're just the obvious ones. All of them have failed. It's just my mowing business worked out quite well, and it makes up for the whole thing. But as to having some grand foresight about what's going to work, the only thing I can say, Tracy, is that nothing ever works out the way you expect. Most things work out worse, considerably worse, and occasionally something comes along that works out better than you expect. That's really all I could say. So if you look at
great advice.
Profit of success, I'd be a pretty lousy one.
No, I think what you've said there is so powerful because, with my experience in business and life, nothing ever goes according to plan, right? But I think that's the beauty of it. It's that journey where, you might have set out to, some of us have these big extravagant goals, but then it's that journey of getting towards that goal or those mistakes that happen along the way. That's where the beauty lies, I think.
Yeah. Look, the great things I've done were never based having great, bold plans. It was simply looking at what I'm doing and saying, how can I do that better? How can I get better service to customers? How can I look after my employees and my franchisees better? Just minuscule things, thousands and thousands of tiny little experiments, the ones that work for me. And when you do tiny things, they sort of add up. It's like when you're mowing the lawn, okay? I mean, it's a simple process in a sense, but the actual difference in the way you can do it is quite major, like the way you collect the grass clippings, for example. I used to have a plastic bin, like a rubbish bin, and I'd put woven poly grass bags in there. And then I'd empty the grass into the bags and be held up over the lid of the thing. And then I'd take it out when it was full, put it against a tree somewhere I'd already cut, pull the next one up. And then if I finished the backyard and I've got 3 heavy bags of grass, I'd put one in the bin already, put that on top of a mower, one on top of that, one over my back, and I'd walk out
Mm.
with 3 bags of grass. Now, that might not seem anything very spectacular, but that's a system I worked out that could save you, 5 minutes on
Yeah.
cutting the lawn just by taking the grass out. And then you work out the best way to get around a tree and the best way to go between jobs and what extras you can do, what you can charge for them, and what equipment that you can use. And I was one of the first contractors to have a brush cutter because I could do a better job. It was just tiny, tiny things all the way along. How do you
Mm.
amaze your customers, the people you're dealing with, in recent years, my franchisees, and how do you do it more cost effectively?
Yeah. And Jim, I'd love to know, how did you find letting go? You sound like you're very, I want to say chilled about the process. How did you find letting go that bit more as things started to scale and grow?
Well, Tracy, I have one great benefit. I am incompetent at almost everything. There's
Oh,
always
fair enough.
somebody who can do it better than me.
I love
with
how honest
very,
you are.
with very rare exceptions. So it's not that difficult to find somebody who can do it better than I do it. I'm actually, my wife is helping me a lot with the business now, and most
Oh,
things she does
fantastic.
far better than me. She's far better at accounts. She's got far better mind for detail. She's got better
Mm.
people skills. I mean, she's incomparably more capable than me. Now, I have certain abilities, like, for example, I'm relentlessly, what do you call it, optimistic. I'm
Yeah.
always the glass half full. I'm always, I never give up. I never get discouraged. I just keep on trying new
Mm.
things. I have that ability. I'm very creative. I'm very passionate about, and I can communicate that well. But I mean, you just about finished it, really. I mean, in terms of my actual business skills, they're surprisingly meager.
So would you advise to business owners be always make sure that you've got someone or, your team can do it better than you can?
Yeah, yeah. Look, I feel sorry for people who can do everything the best because they find it very hard to let go. But then you look at people like, and they've done their studies of US college students, and look at the ones who've succeeded in life, and they're
Mm.
almost never the ones who come top of the class.
So
They're
true.
the middle-ranking ones, the misfits, the people who just object to everything and question everything. But then
Mm.
they're particularly brilliantly in school, but you're always
Yeah.
looking for different ways of doing things, and you never accept it. I would argue with my tutors at university. they, they they have all these ways of doing things. And I said, but that's wrong. So
Love it.
I would get a mark on an essay, and I would go in and I would tell the tutor what was wrong with their opinion.
Oh, that's so brave.
Well, not really, because I wasn't scared of anybody, you see. So I
Right.
remember one case where somebody went in to talk to them after me, this tutor that I'd just been telling off why their comments were all wrong. And they said they looked rather shell-shocked. That was kind of me. So very, very unorthodox. And that's what killed my academic career too, because I was so unorthodox. I was thinking about things in a totally different way. And my
Mm.
people, they didn't know what to make of it. They look at this stuff that you were saying, and this is wild. One of the comments on my PhD was that, this was the magnum opus at the end of a distinguished career. Well, maybe we'd think about it, but who is this guy? He's telling everything we've talked about history is completely wrong. All the
Right.
explanations are wrong. And which is why, of course, I never could get an academic career, because nobody's going to employ a historian. He doesn't agree with anybody else about what causes history to happen.
Yes. On that note, please walk us through your studies and what are the points that you disagree with history or you think that, that mankind could have done differently or what's not true?
Well, basically, I've come to the conclusion that history is mainly to do with biology. Like, for
Mm.
example, you look at something like the First World War, and I'll give this just one example,
Please.
right? And people give all kinds of reasons. It's the great powers, it's the ambition, it's the economic interest, and it's the clash of empires, and go into all of this. And you could probably get 50 different reasons for it. Okay. Now, do you know why I think the Great War happened, the First World War happened? It's a thing called a lemming cycle. It's the same kind of biological mechanism for the same reasons as caused lemmings to become build up a population explosion and migrate and become very bold. It's a lemming cycle.
Mm.
Nothing to
Right.
do with economics, anything else. It's a purely, and we're looking at the physiology of why that happens in terms of dopamine and those kinds of things to understand this. We're actually doing experiments with mice right now that we're putting them through multi-generation forces to try and reproduce these things, because there's a theory as to why it
Interesting.
happens. But you can understand when you say a thing like that, people are going to look at you and say, but what are you smoking? This is just not sensible. No, nobody thinks like this. This is just not proper history.
Mm. Jim, I love that you don't conform. I think it's great. And I guess I'm wondering, where does that, it sounds like you always stand up for what you believe in, and you just seem very fearless to voice your opinion, or to, where does it come from?
Well, I don't really care in a sense what somebody else thinks. It's what I often say in a sense of understanding why things happen. What I always said to people,
Mm.
you can put a room full of professors telling me that I'm wrong, and I don't care. If
Mm.
a 12-year-old kid comes up and says, okay, this is why you're wrong, here's some contrary evidence, then I'd listen to them. I
Yeah.
just don't. I was having an argument the other day with my research head. He's a wonderful guy. He's a great scientist. He's a tremendous, but we really don't agree on the way we see things. And he was describing this guy, this book I'm writing called The Baby Bus, and I've just given him to read, and he doesn't like it very much because it doesn't fit in with his ideas about the way the world works. Even though
Sure.
in terms of science, we work very well together, his basic idea. And he started quoting me this Nobel laureate who gave it completely different reasons. And I said, I don't
Mm.
care if he's got a Nobel laureate. It doesn't mean to say he's right. As far as I'm concerned, I don't care. Tell
Yeah.
me why I'm wrong. Where's the evidence that I'm wrong? Give me a better pattern to show that I'm wrong. I just
Mm.
had that kind of mind that I really don't mind what anybody thinks. If they can't give me a good reason for it, I just don't care because they're wrong. Now, maybe
Mm.
I'm wrong too, but then you've got to show me why I'm wrong.
I think it's great because I think majority of people just, they don't actually research the facts or disagree with everyone, and they're almost, I guess, maybe too scared to say, well, no, I don't agree with what you're saying. So I think it's really great that you don't conform.
That's right. And in a sense, that's why my business works the way it does, because I wasn't afraid to do things very differently. When I was setting up my contract back in 1988, 1999, I looked at a competitor's contract and I didn't like it because it seemed to me not very good for franchisees. So I went to some lawyers and I said, can you give me a contract which has got these features in it?
Hmm.
And they sort of looked at me aghast and they said, you can't do this. This is not proper franchising because you're giving your franchisees so many rights. Um, they said what they said, you're being too nice. That's the way they put it.
Right.
And I said, well, no, I'd want a system that I'd want to join. Now, I didn't think
Hmm.
it'd be very much. I thought, as I said, maybe I have 100 franchisees, but I put clauses in it like um, you have absolutely first right of refusal to territory. But you can work wherever you like. You're not restricted. We're restricted on what we can do for the advertising leads, but you're not restricted. You can build your business as much as you like. You can put as many employees as you like. Your fees don't change. You have
Hmm.
the right. You own the client base. We cannot take a job off you without your consent. We must renew your contract at the end of the term. We're obliged to, because I'd seen things that were happening where franchises were being badly treated, and I hated that. So I
Hmm.
just said, I want a contract. And these lawyers said, this is not proper franchising. You've got to give yourself more flexibility, the way they put it. Their opinion was that with time I would modify that, but I didn't actually. I did the opposite because I was listening to my franchises all the time, and they had concerns. So I put extra protection in. Like, for example, later on, I gave my franchisees the right to change to a different region if they don't like the franchisor, even a
Hmm.
different division. And their franchisor has no say because the franchisees are in control. They can vote out their franchisor. They can veto changes to their own manual. I've even put a clause in the contract last year that says majority control of Jim's group cannot be sold without the written consent of the majority of franchisees. And
Right.
because I want my people to be protected after I'm gone and can no longer protect
Hmm.
them. And my CFO said, that's crazy because you'll dramatically reduce the value of your business. And I said, good, because I don't care about the value of business. I want my franchise looked after. So all these
Hmm.
things were just radical thinking. I just looked at what everybody else said. I don't like that. I'll do it my way. And I don't care
Yeah.
what anybody else says or anybody else thinks if I think I'm right, which is the case even when I'm wrong, of course, because then I don't care either. But you have to show me through hard learning that I am wrong. But
Yeah.
it's just my very stubborn temperament. My wife says she says I've got Asperger's, actually. I'm just so indifferent to anything else if I think I'm right.
Yeah, well, I think it's fantastic and it's so refreshing because most people just conform and it's so boring. So it's really great to have this conversation with you. Jim, I'd love to know, what is your why? Why do you do what you do?
I have multiple goals. My first goal is and has always been my research. For more than 50 years, I've followed this avenue. I think it's something that could change the world. I
Mm,
still believe in it. Even if nobody, in the beginning at least, nobody believes in it at all. I think that's the thing. And my business was designed not to make money for myself. I really live a very simple lifestyle, but to fund my research. 90% of my income goes towards that, my net income. Secondly, I care about my franchisees. It's a kind of a mission. I nothing upsets me more than a franchisee doing badly. And it does
mm,
happen. And then I ask myself, what can you do? And I get multiple emails a day or contacts a day from franchisees wanting help with something or other, always looking at what can I do for them? How can I help them to succeed? So I'm very motivated by that. And I have my children, my family too. That's really important to me. I have 10 children and I love them dearly and I want them to
mm,
succeed and I'm involved with them. And these all meet together in a way because in the future, I think our society is going in a really bad direction, and that would be bad for
mm.
my kids. So it's kind of my research is really aimed at them too. So have a life which is very purpose driven, you might say.
Mm. Jim, did you say you have 10 children?
Yeah, 10. Oh, don't you? I mean,
So,
that's
oh, I've got two fur babies, but I'm actually just digesting what you said because you've built this amazing empire. 10 children, please give us the secrets because, I only have two dogs and that's hot enough.
well, don't forget I'm the father, not the mother. But I have to say too that I often say people want advice on being happily married, come to me because I've had 3 divorces, so I can tell you everything not to do. All right.
Oh, yes.
It yes, I'm a big failure in that regard, except that I met my current wife 24 years ago and we're still
Oh,
crazily in love
amazing.
and working together and everything else. So I guess in the end you can get it right. You just got to find
Yes.
someone crazy enough to put up with me, really. What she says is that Jim has more faults than the stars in the sky, and his virtues
Oh,
are quite few, like the sun. But you said when the sun,
yeah.
you don't see the stars.
Oh, 24 years. That's incredible.
Yeah, she is, and we're wonderful, and a great blessing. I mean,
Mm,
sometimes life is what you make of it, and sometimes God just decides to pour down His blessing upon you. When I met my wife 24 years ago.
yeah. Jim, on that note, where do you think people go wrong in marriage? I'd love to know.
See, a lot of what happened, my first marriage, my wife got restless, I think. She had a boyfriend, which I couldn't put up with. I'm not into open marriages.
Oh, no,
But,
you and me
but
both.
I had 5 children with her, and I was very dedicated to my kids. I love kids to an extreme, unreasonable degree. And I had access part-time. And when I was with them, I just focused on them to the exclusion of everything else. So in a way, I don't blame my second and third wife. And even Lee, my current wife, had a lot of problems with that too. So I'm
Mm,
very, very, very focused. I just love my kids, especially when they were little, so much. And that was
mm.
really difficult for any woman to cope with. But my third wife actually said to me, if you're prepared not to see your children, I'd stay with you. But I can't do
Wow.
that. I
No.
don't blame her. She knew I wouldn't say it. She wasn't asking me to, but it was
Mm,
just so hard for her. And what can you say? Lee is just wonderful. She's just an incredibly giving person, and
mm.
um, makes her sound like an angel. She's actually a pretty fiery demon at times too. So we match each other. We have the
I love
biggest argument,
that.
but very,
Yeah.
very passionate.
Yeah. And Jim, it sounds like you have such a fierce passion for those close to you, whether it's your children or your franchisees. Have you always been that way?
Yes. Oh, yes.
Mm,
Extreme, extreme passion. I don't mellow
mm.
much. At the age of 73, I'm still likely to go off at the drop of a hat about anything and everyone. So, yeah, I'm very passionate. But it goes together with that fiery temperament. I care a lot about, I get very emotional about things. I cry in church. I mean, I get really, I'm just an emotional driven sort of person.
Yeah. I'm very much the same, so it resonates.
Yes, okay. You have to be paired with somebody who's a similar thing. If you marry somebody who's too mild, they can't cope with you, which is again a problem with my second marriage. So you've got to have somebody who matches you. It's a funny thing
Yes.
when I first met Lee, we were actually it was a crazy situation. For a man who's married 3 times, I actually
Mm.
got married to her. I got engaged to her 13 days after we met.
Oh
And
my
a week ago,
goodness.
I was actually in America. So I was completely lunatic out of my mind. And, and after I'd known her for about a month, she was trying to behave very well, not to put me off. And I said to her once, I said, it's very strangely because I know you're in heart, you're a very fiery sort of person,
Yes.
but you haven't shown any signs of it. You're not arguing with me or anything like that.
Hmm.
And she was thinking, how on earth does he know what I'm like? But I could tell because she had that fiery, sparkly temperament.
Hmm.
When I first when I first met her, we were sitting across the table at this table in the shopping center, and I was just and she was just had this vivid. She was so alive. She was so sparkling, so expressive, so amazing. I often say I didn't fall in love at first sight. It took me about half an hour. It was just
Yeah.
mesmerizing, and she had that. And I knew she had a fiery temper. And by
Mm.
jeepers, we've had fights over the years, really, really bad ones. When we were first married, she used to actually attack me physically.
Oh
And
my
then
goodness.
I controlled her, but I'd put her on the ground and sit on her until she calmed down. So it's
Oh,
we're a
yeah.
fine pair. But anyway,
Yeah. And thanks for sharing, Jim. I just love how honest you are. And what role has your faith played in your success?
well, it's very core. Mind you, I was a fairly fervent atheist till I was 28, so that was quite
Oh,
recent.
really?
Yeah, but I was like Paul on the road to Damascus. I switched sides. I'm one side or the other.
Hmm.
Um, has a sense of God's presence, God's calling, and became a Christian overnight. I mean, just in the space of half an hour. Um, it's very central to the way I think about things. For example, if you looked at why guiding principle to the way that Jim's works,
Yeah.
it's Jesus washing his disciples' feet. Now, in those days, washing people's feet was a very degraded job. It was a thing that a
Hmm.
slave. It was a very low job. And occasionally, a very revered rabbi, the disciples might wash his feet as a sign of respect. So on the night before he was betrayed, when Jesus actually knelt down and started washing his disciples' feet, that was a really radical idea. It was
Hmm.
really against tradition. Jesus was an innovator. I mean, he was, in many ways, he carried on with Jewish tradition, but in some ways he was a radical innovator. And that's an
Yeah.
example of that sort of behavior. And I don't see myself as the boss. I see myself as the servant of my franchisees. I'm there to help them succeed. Now, that doesn't mean to say I'm not tough with them. I am about customer service and I'm relentless. So I push them hard
Hmm.
and sometimes they get upset at me. But I know that's the only way for them to succeed. And I know the better service they give, the more likely they are to report good income and stay long term. So I am very tough. But at the same time, I'm there to help them. And if I thought it was somebody's best interest to leave the system and do something else, I'd tell them to do that because their
Yeah.
interest has to be predominant. That's very much tradition of the Gospels. And then you have a
Hmm.
look at the parable of the talents, for example, which is one of my absolute favorite passages, which is the idea that God gives us gifts, abilities, and we're supposed to use them. That's
Hmm.
a fundamental obligation of life. And then you look at the concern Jesus had for the poor, which is also very much in James's letter, which is written his brother. They're
Yes.
very similar ways of thinking about things, Sermon on the Mount, that kind of idea, and the idea that
Hmm.
riches are dangerous, harder for a rich man to enter the kingdom of heaven than a camel to go through the eye of a needle. These are all very central to the way I think about business and about life. I
Hmm.
don't like spending. I don't live extravagantly. My kids, when they were growing up, especially the younger ones, they had some theoretical idea we were rich, but they saw no sign of it. It was just
Yeah.
very normal house.
Mm.
And just they just did chores and I'm doing the laundry and washing up and stuff, and it's just normal stuff.
Mm.
So where's the mansion? Where's the servants? Where's the expensive overseas holidays? Where's the fine clothes? I mean, most of my stuff, apart from uniforms, comes from Kmart, and
I
that's
love
got holes
Kmart.
in it. So it's a way of looking at life which is very distinctive. And I think that's, to my mind, very much following in the footsteps of the master. Jesus is he's my guru. And if I look at any book that really influences me, it's the Bible. It's the cornerstone of the way I think about life and about the world and about business.
And are you happy to share the moment that you met God?
I was walking through the union building. This was in orientation week, and there was a group of kids there on the Christian Union stand, and I just randomly got talking to them, which was really just happened. And I'd been past stages in the past. I'd never done it. I just got talking to them, and I liked them. And then they said, we're having a sort of a retreat. Would you like to come? Now, I'm an atheist, okay, so it's a bit odd thing to ask, but I said, okay, I'll come along. And in the first morning of the retreat, there was a time of quiet, a quiet time, and people would bit down and pray, read the scriptures. Well, I can't pray because I don't believe in God. So
Yeah.
what I did is I had a textbook and I had a red pen, and I thought I'll just write down what comes to my mind, just the inner thoughts from within. It's like an exercise. And as I wrote that, I just felt this sense God was calling me. And so I sat down atheist and got up as a Christian, which really
Wow.
surprised people, I guess, shocked them
Mm.
actually, because I was very outspoken and became very fervent and been involved in evangelism and all kinds of things. So
Yeah.
I can't be. It's like they like it says in Revelation, wish you were either hot or cold. If you are lukewarm, I will spit you out of my mouth. Okay, that makes me feel
Yes.
pretty good because that's me. I can't I can't
Same.
be one way about something.
No, I'm either 100% in or I'm out. So there's no gray area.
Yeah, you sound a bit like me, Tracy. So
Very, very
I
similar.
hope you haven't got all my bad points too, though. But anyway,
Perhaps maybe my first husband will say I have, but we actually have the gardening at 8 in common because I wanted to get my ears pierced, and my dad's a very traditional part Greek South African man, and he said, "Not a chance. You can pay for it yourself." So anyway, I schemed up a plan. I noticed there was weeds in the garden, and so for every bucket of weeds, he gave me 2 rand. I got my brother on board, and my brother was great because he didn't pull them out properly. So a week later, they were back. So I paid him 1 rand. I got a rand from that and saved 28 rand and finally got my ears pierced. But that's where I guess my business interest kind of started. This exchange of services for money, kind of getting something that I'm after. So yeah, we have that in common as well.
yeah. Well, isn't that good that that he made you work for it? Sounds like they had some good ideas. Your dad. It's a
Definitely,
mistake to let
yeah.
kids have life too easy. I don't believe in that. I really don't.
No, dad was the same.
Mm.
Definitely. He made us work for pretty much everything. At the time I was like, it's not fair, Kirsten or whatever's got X, Y, Z and all these designer clothes. But now as an adult, I have that appreciation for you have to work really hard. And my drive, I've done a predictive index. My drive's like off the charts. So I think it was from that, my upbringing and having that instilled in me at a young age.
Yeah, and the challenge with us as parents in a wealthy society is to try and be as tough with our children as which we don't always succeed in. It's difficult in this day and age. But
Yeah.
when my youngest son Aaron, when he was very young, about 8 years old, we started doing a fast together, which is a 1 month where you
Yes.
give up something, usually
Mm.
sweet things for a whole month, no sweet drinks, no
Mm.
desserts, nothing. And he did that with me from that age, and he's
Great.
developed some very, very good habits from that. I'm not saying he's a perfect kid in every way. You look, judged by his last history report, he's not doing so well. But he's got that character that says, I want to be a better person. And that's more
Mm.
important than anything. And he really has that mind. I want to. Sometimes he wants to do exercise. I mean, Dad, hold me accountable.
Great.
It's that character, and that's
Mm.
a toughness. And his mother as much as me too, because she's a great one for lecturing. She lectures the kids a lot. Even now, when they're grown up, she does it. She tries not to, but it's just her nature. So we have this fairly tough attitude towards
Mm.
upbringing. I mean, I love my kids a lot, but look, it's the same. Kids and franchisees are much the same in a way. And I don't want to infantilize anybody, but you've got to
No.
care a lot about people you're dealing with, but you've got to care enough to be able to take a very tough line. So I say to a kid, I mean, I don't only say I love you all the time, but it's pretty obvious. But I want you to do this, or this isn't good enough, or you need to try harder. I mean, or whatever the story is. And the same thing with franchisees. Okay, look, I recognize that you're doing some good work, but you didn't bring this customer back. Why not? What's happening? What's going wrong? Do you understand why it's important? You know,
Yes.
and if you ring them back, you've got to send a text too. You've got to follow the whole process. You've got to do it. I know it sounds extreme. And sometimes they say to me, you're making me lose sleep, and it's causing me mental illness and stuff. And they really come on because all these complaints you send through. And I said, but you've got to do it. It's part of your system. I want you to succeed, and that's why I'm being tough with you.
Jim, how is it that you provide such a high level of care to your, to your franchisees? Do you have a system in place that you've built out? Because again, there's only 24 hours in a day. You're one person. What's the secret there?
Well, the primary support is given by what we call a franchisor. We have regional franchisors, and they have a role which is they've got to take calls, and they must respond promptly, and they also ring the franchisees regularly, ideally weekly, at least monthly, and then they've got to hold regular meetings. So there's a structure that we've set in place that's doing that. Contacting me is beyond that. It's on top of that. So if they can't reach their franchisor, for example, if they want an answer to a question the franchisor didn't agree with them, or they disagree with their franchisor, is their franchisor wrong? And usually the franchisor is right, but sometimes they're not. So it's just incredibly useful for them to be able to come to me. Look, biggest problem with that, people say 5,500 franchisees with my direct phone number and email address. Biggest problem I have is that not enough of them contact me. Sometimes
really?
I'll get from somebody who eventually say, look, I've been struggling with this for the last 6 weeks and I've had very little income. And my response is, why didn't you call me 6 weeks ago?
Yes.
Quite often I can do something. So when a franchisee approaches me, lacking work is the most common thing, leads, then I go through a whole stack of different things. And I look at we have a system called pay for work guarantee where you can do free services. And I go into that one and I give them some access to some videos on showing how to do it. And then I get a list of the unserviced leads from other divisions. Would you want to do any of these? And then I might go in to talk about the way they put themselves down for work and what leads they're taking and all the rest of it. So you go through the whole process of helping. It's incredibly important because sometimes you can have like an email with somebody which might take me 15 minutes that can actually transform somebody's business in their life. Or sometimes I find out things that are going wrong. I had a message from a fencing franchise yesterday. Fencing's usually got plenty of leads. This guy doesn't. So I was going through looking at things and I was seeing certain jobs he wasn't doing. And why can you do that? And then we looked at things like your conversion rate and so forth. Why some franchises converting 70% and others only 30%. So what's the difference? So you just try to help in every way you can. But I'm not the first line. It's the franchisor is, and they're a wonderful bunch of people on the whole. They really care. It's part of our culture that we tend to attract and breed such leaders, which is really the most humbling thing of all. Because in practice, we had a conference in Queensland some years back where there was a guy from the UK who'd been involved with dozens of franchise systems over the years. He was coming to speak at our conference, and he said, I've never seen anything like the attitude that your franchisors have. They just genuinely care about franchisees. Now, that makes me very proud because what it means is that what I, as one person, believed in the beginning, now there's like 200 franchisors, and by and large, they share these values. And the franchisees do tend to too. So when there's a meeting, you'll get a new guy come along with some problems or an issues, and the others, the more experienced, will actually help them. And that attitude of caring about people tends to go very widely. I'm a lot more proud of that than I am about any numbers or any income, anything else. During COVID, we in Victoria, we were a lot worse off than you in Perth.
Yes,
we weren't
you guys were.
anything for 2 months, which got me very, very angry and upset. And I got very I was so upset. I went on national television. Two of my daughters wouldn't speak to me for months afterwards. They were so
Oh,
furious,
really?
undermining this great thing. But the point of it is, first of all, we didn't charge fees during that time at all because it's not fair, not allowed to work. But not only that, but my franchisors, even though they weren't getting paid, were actually working harder than normal because they were on the phone to franchisees all the time and comforting them and supporting them and advising them. And franchisees would actually help each other. There was one young lady who was a dog wash franchisee. She was actually a student, so she had no income. There's no government income for her. She had no income at all. She was forbidden by law to do her job, which she was quite good at. She was threatened with eviction. She couldn't pay food bills. You know, other people looked after her. They gave her meal vouchers. They did too. I said, if you get evicted, you come and stay at our conference center, which is empty.
Wow.
We'll look after you. And we helped her a bit too. But it was wonderful the way the others got round. And actually, I heard from her afterwards, and she was doing wonderfully. She's making $5,000 a week. So she's a really terrific story. But wasn't it wonderful that in that time of crisis, people looked after each other so well?
Definitely. 100%.
And that's something that I take enormous pride in, because I do think it's largely my attitude that's got spread around. That we show by examples. People learn from what you do more than what you say.
Very true. Jim, on that note, what is the thing that you're most proud of?
That. In terms of business, that attitude, the fact that my franchisees and franchisors, especially franchisors, genuinely care. See, if somebody comes to me, wants to be a franchisor, we might be installing a new division or taking over leadership, I'm going to look at a few things. First of all, I'm going to look at their customer service rating. If it's below excellent, no chance. I'm going to look at their income. They've got to be very good at what they do. They're really got to be. So in other words, I'm not interested. Our typical franchisee probably turns over about $3,000 a week. So I'm looking at somebody doing substantially better than that. And then I look, as far as I possibly can, at some element shows that they really are the caring, nurturing sort of person, because being a franchisor is a matter of leadership. It's like a coach, a counselor, a mentor, that kind of role. So I want to see some evidence of that. And because of the book you mentioned before, the book, which was Every Customer a Fan, we give that to every new franchisee and we spread it very widely. We don't sell it. It's that's got that culture in it, and people read that and they hear me talking very passionately during franchisee training. And it builds that sense of culture, that sense of who we are and what we believe in, which is very, very distinctive. There's a book, I don't know if you're in the Jim Collins book, Good to Great, Built to Last.
Yes.
They're looking at companies and wondering why certain companies were successful long term. Now, having to bear in mind, these are companies that are many times orders of magnitude bigger than Jim's. But one of the things that they found out was that successful companies tended to have a very powerful culture, and it was spread everywhere from the mailing room to the CEO. Everything else changed, but that basic core value didn't change, and it was different. I mentioned 3M, and it was to do with innovation, and it was different cultures, but it was a shared value system, which we at Jim's very securely have. And even things like the fact that I give my number out and my email address to 5,500 franchisees and tell them you can ring me anytime and you can contact me anytime, and I mean it. And when they contact me, they get a very fast, considered response. It isn't always what they want to hear, but they get a response from it. They get it quickly and they get it in full. That expresses in reality what I'm talking about. And people find that very surprising, I must say. It's one of the things people shocks most. They just can't believe it. Because I was talking to a guy yesterday and he said, I've worked for 4 different companies. Never even met the CEO in any of them. He said, I just can't believe it. You're the CEO of this company, this size, and you're wandering around talking to us all individually, which I do during training.
Yeah, it is incredible. It's very, very rare that happens.
But it's very powerful too. I tell you what, I mean, it does reflect the fact that I'm so pathetically bad at doing most jobs. I have more time than you possibly could imagine to do things of that nature. But it's incredibly useful because, yes, I love helping people. I really do. And most of the messages I get back are very positive. I send out a 1-month email, ask how they're going. And most of the responses, they mostly reply. They're very positive and very heartwarming. I get some great stories. If I get some really good ones, I give it to Joel, and my social media guy, and he does an interview and spreads it around to say why they're doing so well. But sometimes they need help, and then I can help them. But then out of that process, I find things that are going wrong. Why is this person failing? Bear in mind, our core mission is that every franchisee succeeds. What are we doing wrong here? What's not helping? For example, the pay for work guarantee system, for example. I had a claim just recently, and not a claim, but the guy wasn't actually doing it. And I looked at the actual what was in the contract of that particular division, which is hazardous waste removal, and I found that the actual requirements were unreasonable. Now, I hadn't looked at in the past because it never come up. We never had a person make a claim, but now this person had a situation where they need to make a claim, and I looked at it and I said, this is just not right. This is not feasible. You can't actually get yourself a proper income by doing this promotional stuff or whatever it is. So I eventually contacted the head of the division and all the franchisor and said, we need to change this. This is not feasible. And so we changed it, not only for that guy, but for everybody else. Now, that kind of thing I can do. And people don't like to argue with me about such things because when it comes to franchisee service, they share the values and they could recognize that it wasn't fair or reasonable. Now, this just happened in the past couple of days.
Jim, as business owners, we often get very, very overwhelmed. We get stressed to the point where we make ourselves ill. Has there ever been a time where you felt like you were in over your head, and how did you sort of navigate through that?
Not in business terms, not ever.
Wow.
No, I don't. I just have this resilient nature. I'm like one of those, plastic things with the weights in the bottom, that like you knock them over and they spring back. I'm just I think the only thing that really, really floors me is family. At one stage I lost access to my kids, my first 5 kids for 2 years, which was an awful thing for my wife to do, really, my first wife. And honestly, it was just terrible. No matter how much you think you should get more money, stopping a father seeing his children is a terrible thing. Now that was the worst experience of my whole life. That was absolutely shocking. It didn't destroy my business, but it was beyond belief horrible. And I think in reality, it's personal things that upset me the most.
Yeah, I find I'm the same. Did you take time out, or did you have a support group during that time?
No, I didn't. I was, I'm a churchgoer, regular churchgoer, so that was important to me. You just had to keep on fighting. You can't give up. But even though I was emotionally devastated, I have an obligation to my franchisees. It's a very powerful reason. It doesn't matter what I feel like. I've got to do what's necessary. So I continue to support them. You can't give up. And I have a mission. I have a belief that I'm here. God's given me a purpose in life, and you can't. It's not an option. It's not really a choice. It's not a decision. This is my life. This is who I am. You do these things.
Jim, you're definitely speaking my language. I had a very challenging year last year, and someone says to me, just spend the day in bed. And I was like, there's not a chance in hell I can spend a day in bed. Like, I have a mission. I have a team looking up to me. I have clients I need to look after. And the thought of spending a day in bed, I'm like, I can't think of anything worse. Like, I was like, I have my mission, my business, my faith was really my North Star during that time. And I think if I hadn't had that and some key people, I'm not quite sure I'd be sitting here. So it really still gave me that focus to kind of keep going forward.
Yes, that's right too. I know the same thing about retirement too. People are often asking about retirement, and I say, yeah, look, I'm ready. It's all planned. My retirement ceremony will be there. It'll be in a church. I insist on that, and I'll be the guest of honor, and I'll be in a box because I'll be dead. That's my retirement ceremony. So I reckon I'm 73 years old, about as good health as you can be mentally and physically. I'll probably live another 20 years.
Yes.
Rupert Murdoch and Warren Buffett can do it, so why not me?
Of course.
And if there's any medical advances in the meantime, I'm certainly going to take full advantage. But I've got 20 years left approximately, and I'm going to make every day count as long as I've got.
Yeah, and cheers to that. I heard it was is it Michele or Michael Ferrero who invented Ferrero Rocher? He worked until I think he was 94, and he worked until the day he died. Like, there was just no retirement. He was just so focused on his passion, his mission, that was his calling, and that's what he did for all of his life.
Yeah, That's right. That's what life is for.
Mm.
Life is meant to be lived. I think the biggest mistake people make is that they think the best thing if you want to live a good life is to do what feels good. And that can
Mm.
be, leisure, it can be alcohol, it can be drugs, it can be sex, it can be
Mm.
video games, it can be social media, it can be nice food, it can be all kinds of different things like that. And the point of it is, and chasing success and having prestige and honor
Yeah.
and these kind of things, these are all sort of feel good stuff, but they don't bring happiness. Happiness is
Mm-mm.
about meaning in life. And they've actually discovered that. This is about money. People have very wrong ideas. They think if I got more money and I have a better car and a better
Always.
be happy. And it just doesn't work that way. After
Mm-mm.
you get about average medium Australian income has surprisingly little effect on happiness. But what they have found is there are ways to convert money into real satisfaction and happiness with life. You know what the
Mm.
best way is? This is what social scientists have found out.
Yeah.
Give it away to a
Yeah.
cause that you believe in, that you're involved in.
Mm.
That's a recipe. And it may not be. Look, I get up in the morning and I have a run and I do weightlifting and stuff. And that's not a choice. It's an obligation because I need to keep my body healthy. And then I have a
Yes.
cold shower, which isn't always the easiest thing in the middle of
Oh, you're
winter.
brave. No.
Yeah, just minutes under the cold water, and that's part of. It's not really a choice in a way because it's an obligation.
Mm.
I do have an obligation. I've got so much I need to do. I cannot afford not to be in good health. I can't take life
Yes.
easy. I can't spend
Mm.
a day in bed doing nothing. I can't
No.
neglect anything. I can't indulge myself in the wrong kind of food. I mean, I love chocolate and stuff. I've got a terrible thing. Yeah, went to
Same.
a talk at our conference center from a group of addicts, people that had real addiction problems, and I said, "Look, I have to go confess, guys. I've got this really, really bad addiction. It's to Nutella. I am
Oh.
so bad. I get a jar of that stuff, and I start eating it, and I will just eat
Really?
a whole lot. I am hooked to that thing. Oh my goodness."
Oh,
Family, when they buy it, they actually try to hide it from me. But they put it obviously like a bread maker, and I can always find it. I can sniff it out. I'm like a drug sniffer, the dog that sniffs for
at the
drugs.
airport.
But I only
Oh,
control these things one way. I don't have it in the house. I stop buying them.
yes.
If you want to buy sweet things, buy something that I find disgusting, and
Yes.
that's okay. You can have that, but nothing.
100%.
And I tell my kids, no chocolate. Stop giving me chocolate. And they know
Yes.
that's the thing that I like, but it's not good for me, so don't give it to me.
I know if it's
But
in the
actually,
pantry,
they get
I'll eat
very
it.
creative. One of the things my daughter and partner gave me. I'm a great admirer of Monty Burns from The Simpsons.
Mm.
They actually did a video with all the best Monty Burns episodes on it. So that creative presence I like, but not chocolate.
Not chocolate. No, no, and not Nutella.
Not Nutella, especially not Nutella. I had somebody actually gave me a big, you know, big jar.
I've seen those big
Caterer's
jars. Yeah.
Gave it away. No way.
Jim, how has your understanding of biology impacted the way you do business?
Look, it's all about character. And I don't know if there's a relationship. Everything is about character. Societies change, not because of some economic or political or anything else, because people change. And if you get
Yeah.
people who are hardworking and enterprising, you'll have a wealthy society. Now, the institutions do matter because you look at, say, North versus South Korea, for example.
Hmm.
The North's sort of backwards and poor and poverty-stricken and starving, and the South's one of the most prosperous. So it does matter, but you've got to have that hardworking, enterprising temperament. That is what creates a great society. And I would apply the same lesson to business too. Don't look for experience. Certainly don't look for qualifications. Look for character. And if I look at the people that are the best that come from the ground floor, people like
Yeah.
Joel, who you had contact with. Now, he started with the most basic job, basically temporary entry-level job, just carting files around, that kind of stuff. He's now one of my most valued managers. He's transformed the
Wow.
business. Paul is
Mm.
amazing. I shouldn't keep on praising him. People might try and pinch him, but I don't think he'd ever leave us. Or Megan. Now, Megan is a wonderful lady. She's actually was working also in a very minimal position. And I was pleased with her and I gave her a pay rise. Now, this is a single mother in her 40s, okay?
Yeah.
And I gave her a pay rise. She had tears in her eyes because she'd never had in her whole life a pay rise. She's now one of my top best managers, incredibly creative, incredibly idealistic. So you look at either people, you look at their qualifications and their experience and stuff, you wouldn't see anything, but they're brilliant people. Or
Yes.
Cynthia, who's now my CFO, who came to me, started in a very junior role in accounts and just showed that ability. So look for character above everything else. And I don't care about age. I don't care about sexual orientation. I don't care about looks. I don't care about qualifications. I don't much care about experience. What I want is character.
And then what do you believe is the key to great leadership?
Well, that sort of presupposes that I show this element, and in a lot of ways I don't particularly. But it depends what you're after doesn't it? I mean, there's a lot of business today is very exploitative. You look at what goes on in the franchising industry, which makes me absolutely furious. You get
It's pretty full on.
like Retail Food Group who buy out these great brands and they say, okay, how can we rip people off in spades? And they rip them off and they do grossly unfair things. They make them sell pizzas like below the cost, and they don't care because they get a percentage, and they do all kinds of awful things. They're just driven by money. There are so many vulture, evil businesses around that are so nasty and so exploitative. Now, if you want that kind of leader, and a good example is Jack Welch, who was one of the most admired business leaders of the 20th century. And he was hugely wealthy as a result of all the things that he did. But basically, because he was after the short-term profits, in a sense, he destroyed, in effect, what's largely a great company. It's now a shadow of itself 25 years after he retired. So to me, great leadership is doing something that's got enduring value, that's got something that lasts. It's this good to great, built to last idea, like 3M. Companies that build something that really matter and they really care. Now, you look at someone like, choose a very controversial figure, Elon Musk. Now, he's about the flakiest individual you could possibly imagine, and what he's done with Doge is appalling, and some of the stuff he's done. But you look at what he's done with SpaceX as a perfect example. There's a wonderful book written about this recently. I can't forget the name. Just how he's transformed spaceflight, and he's done it by a relentless passion and a drive, which actually is very indifferent to people's welfare. He's a very brutal man, but he just gets in there and he gets on the assembly line and says, why do we do this? Why do we use this instead of that? Why do we have so much of this? And he gets in the right nitty-gritty and he drives that passion around him. And he's changed spaceflight. It's now costing a fraction of what it used to. And one day he'll have us landing on Mars. This is a truly great man with some absolutely appalling personal flaws as well. But he's a believer. I'd rather have somebody with great flaws and great passion and great strengths than mediocre on everything. So to me, a great leader is somebody who has a vision and a passion and who's more concerned with what he's dealing with and what he's doing than he is with any degree of personal wealth or anything else. And I think Musk is very much like that. He's driven. Yeah. He wants us to be a multi-planetary species. And as somebody who's loved science fiction, in fact, when I was younger, one of the things I wanted to be as a science fiction writer for years was my major. Completely failed that one as most other things. But the whole idea of going into space fascinates me. And so I really revere him for that, even though I see other things I don't admire so much.
Yeah. And we heard from Joel, you're a bit of a Star Wars fan?
Yeah. I'm a great fan. I'm a great fan of villains. Actually, I like Palpatine. I think he's the guy who, especially the prequels, how he comes from being this admired senator to being the galactic emperor. I think that story of of ambition. Yeah, I'm the bad guys. Monty Burns, excellent. This kind of thing. When I was younger, I used to, like, when I was first a Christian, we went off to look after entertain the kids during the evangelical conference that was at Belgrave Heights, and we had this big stadium with open sides, and the kids were there, and we were looking after them. So we put in these shows, and it was improv, where you're given a vague outline, but you adjust it and you write it up as you go, and then you speak your words, which is the most fun I ever had. Well, I was always the villain. I had to be the bad guy. So I was spending all these different ways. It was the greatest thing you could imagine. You have the heroes on the stage, and he's saying to the kids, "Now you look out for the bad guy, me," and you tell him he's coming, and I started creeping up and on him, and telling the kids, and they're screaming and yelling and going ballistic. He's there, he's there. This guy.
Sounds like so much fun.
I used to do things like this. It was like he was a policeman in one sort of thing. So I would actually do things to him which you didn't expect, like he was on the stage and there was a little place above it in the set, and I got a bucket of water and tipped it over him. So it was. I love the villains. I think people don't recognise the value of the bad guys. I mean, a great
good point.
You've got to have the bad guy. What would Star Wars be without Darth Vader and Palpatine? I mean, honestly,
true. Very true.
Or looking at Spider-Man.
Yes.
With Tobey Maguire ones, the first two. I mean, that's two of my favourite films. I love those films, and it shows the bad guys, but it shows them in a way that's kind of understanding.
Yes.
Like I don't know if you remember them. You have this guy Osborne, what his name was, who's built a business. And his board of directors get together and basically kick him out, destroy him. Well, so naturally he goes and kills them. I mean, who wouldn't want to understand that as a motivation?
Of course. Jim, I feel like I could chat for hours. I guess my last question is, what's one bit of advice you would give yourself if you could go back to 1982 when you first started? What would be one bit of key business advice you give yourself, and why?
There's a lot. I'd say the same thing as the marijuana dealers say. There's a lot of money in grass.
I love
that. Look at it. You have no idea what the potential of this thing is. It's just not a fight. It's the thing. Lawn mowing. Stick to it. Stick to what you know. Get better at that. Forget about all this other stuff. Just do that one thing and do it better. And that's what I say to anybody. Find something got potential and really stick to that and work at it and make it happen.
Yeah, it sounds like focus is a key aspect of what you've done.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. But you've got to have the right focus too. You can focus on the wrong thing and you're going to fail. But if you can find something where you've got an advantage, and that's, what do I do better than anyone else? A lot of things look good, but what do I know about? What do I know? You see, simple things like the home services is fantastic because you can start with nothing, absolutely nothing, and you can build anything. And not just me. I reckon we've created more millionaires than any company in the history of Australia because we show people how to come into business and how to, I was just got an email this morning from somebody who's got a fencing business, and he started a year ago. His first year's turnover $800,000.
Wow.
Now he's based in Perth, as a matter of fact, but he's now looking at starting up a branch in Sydney. And I said, I'll grant you a franchise.
Incredible.
There. The first
opportunity that you created. Yeah, that's amazing.
And he's got a 4.8 rating too. I checked that one, you can be sure. So he's customer service at a possible 5, which is close to as good as you can get.
Yeah, I like I said, I just think the opportunity you've created, it's like this domino effect. It started with you and your $24 and your lawnmower, and it's just become this beautiful thing that's kind of impacted everyone. It's really incredible, Jim.
Well, it's only just started, Tracy.
That's
You're going to see big changes. We've got changes taking place with our software that we're developing, and you're going to see the level of complaints halve in the next year. With the way we're doing things and the kind of reminders and the inbuilt safeguards. Well, I know because I deal with customers all the time. Now, when you see the level of complaints go down by half, you're going to find the level of leads rises dramatically as that good word gets around.
Yes, Definitely.
And we found that too. The better your customer service, every time you reduce the level of complaints, the leads just. Well, in the early days, we found it very difficult to find work. We had canvassers knocking on doors. These days, last year, we had over 200,000 unserviced leads. It's one of our biggest
My
problems now.
goodness. Wow.
We just, and we don't spend more on advertising per franchise. We spend less than we used to because most of our franchisees are so busy. We've even actually reduced their fees. We've just taken them down. We said we don't need the advertising so much anymore. So, why don't we charge you less? I've actually,
Yeah.
my divisions, dog wash and fencing, I've actually reduced their fees because I don't need to spend as much as we used to.
And Jim, sorry, one last question has come to mind. What role has brand played in your success?
Well, it's big, but it's a funny thing. When I left school, I worked for a while at the Department of Civil Aviation, and it was a federal government department, and they were redesigning their logo. They came out eventually with a thing like a box with a spike sticking. I don't know how they got that, but it's been about $1 million on that. Now, when I used to have was mowing lawns by myself, and I had a leaflet, and I found if I put my picture on it, which was me with a beard and a hat, because that's what I looked like, I got more response. And then when I franchised in '89, I thought, well, you can't put a photo. So I got a graphical designer to do a sort of a rendering of that, which is in line drawing.
Right.
And that probably took me, a couple of hours to do, nothing special. And then I decided I wanted a name on it, Jim's Mowing. So I got a few different fonts and I stuck them around the office for my staff to look at. And I said, which do you think is the clearest? So we designed that. So I would think probably that initial brand might have taken me all up maybe about 3 or 4 hours to develop. Okay. But you look at it in a sense, I just didn't understand what I was creating. But the point about it is too, is if you look at it, when we first started looking at cleaning as an example, the one thing we said was that this logo is not going to work for cleaning. This is a guy with a beard and a hat. Looks like a mowing contractor. I was a mowing contractor. I wore the hat because I got reasonably fair skin and it doesn't get knocked off by branches if you're going underneath it. So that's the whole reason for that. And then we said, well, it's not going to work. So we decided when we went into cleaning, we said, okay, we'll do this different brand for Sunlight, SUNLITE, and we had some sprays and stuff and sold a couple of franchises, couldn't find work, gave them their money back. And then somebody came to me and they said, what about Jim's Cleaning? And I said, no, that's not going to work because this is a gardening brand. It's a gardening. It's a gardener, a guy with a beard and a hat who mows lawns for a living. This is not, how can you have a woman go in with a gardening brand, a guy with a beard and a hat on the uniform? And they said it's going to work. And I said, no, it can't possibly work because it's a gardening brand. And they said, we think it'll work. I said, no, it won't. They said, okay, we'll go into partnership. We'll do it, put some funding in. So they did, and it worked. So how does the gardening brand come out to things like cleaning and laundry and dog wash and everything else? In a sense, it almost doesn't matter, does it? The fact is the brand came to stand for quality of service. So what it was fairly irrelevant. Now, as it happens, the fact that I put my name on the brand is helpful because then I can talk as the guy who's actually the one on the logo. Yeah. And that helps a bit. I think it's a good choice. But honestly, I didn't think about much at the time. So I think I'd say in terms of branding, I can't really say that and a few years later, they actually changed. Some of my managers got together and they said, this guy's a bit glum and glowery. Let's do a different picture. And because I'm very hard to get to smile at cameras, they actually kept on trying to shoot pictures of me. And eventually, the only way they get me to smile was one of my managers was pretending to put his tongue in the photographer's ear to get me to smile. Okay, if you want to know why Jim is smiling, that's the reason. And you can actually, if you look at Jim Penman images, you'll see that picture, which is me against the old, very gloomy trailer. That's where it comes from.
Yes. Oh, great. I must remember that one for my clients because we do brand photo shoots and sometimes it's, they get quite awkward. So I'll remember that one. Thanks, Jim.
All right. I don't know if that's any help to you, but I put remarkably little effort into the brand, but I put enormous effort into making sure the brand stands for something. To the extent that I will personally deal with customer complaints if they're not getting fixed properly. And I will sit on them and get fixed. It's an intensive, crazy process to make sure my brand means something
Mm.
rather than the brand itself that's been successful.
Yes, definitely. Jim, where is the best place for our listeners to go should they wish to connect with you?
JimPenman.com.au is a good place to start, or you can go to jims.net and follow it's easy to contact me. My email is jim@jims.net. I'm very open and I do respond to emails. If you're trying to market to me, I probably won't reply. But apart from that, if you're interested in a new division or something like that, I'm very, very, very easy to reach. I think one of the big mistakes people make is they're not accessible. People are very hard to
So
reach.
true.
And most
True.
of my new divisions come from somebody just emailing me out of the blue, and they're astonished to get a response back. And
Yes.
questions, and then take it from there and do a Zoom talk and stuff. And it just goes from that. I've seen that many times. We had a situation where we were trying to get some consultants, and we're talking about a 6-figure type of contract. And I emailed 6 different recommended consultants in this area. One of them replied to me 3 months later, and the rest didn't reply.
My goodness.
I'm absolutely astounded at how people don't respond to simple things like emails. You really can't reach them through that. So that's one of the great things. I am, partly because I am not skilled at doing most things, I can take time to be accessible to my franchisees, but also to outsiders too. And then people approach me about research interests or books or anything, I'll reply to them. Also on jimpenman.com.au, you'll see this digital avatar. Now, if you want to actually ask questions of me without actually speaking to me, you can ask the avatar, and it gives pretty reasonable responses.
Oh, cool.
Because there's more than 1 million words gone. This interview will go in 2, actually. So you can ask a question about what I think about, say, anything, eugenics, for example. You can ask a question and you'll get the genuine response based on AI looking at all the words that I said.
Very cool. That's great.
Great. And one day, Joel reckons that one day after I'm dead and gone, there'll be the Jim's avatar. You can run Jim's group. So there you are.
Nice. Joel's onto it. We'll definitely pop all the links in the show note below. Jim, thank you so much for your time today. I have to say, I feel very privileged to have this conversation. Thank you for making yourself accessible to someone like myself who's still growing and going. I really appreciate your time and everything that you've shared. Yeah, and I absolutely love that you don't conform. I think it's absolutely inspirational.
Thanks, Tracy. Good to talk to you.
Yes, you as well. Thanks, Jim.